For today's hike, we're actually not hiking. We're out on the water in kayaks right now on the Cache River Wetlands in southernmost Illinois. This is the northernmost extent of the Atlantic Gulf coastal plain. So we're in a habitat and we're seeing species that are much more typical of states much further to the south, like Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. We see species like this one here, which is Taxodium distichum, bald cypress. If you look up the tree, you can see there's a lot of bare branches up there, which is why it gets that name, bald cypress. It's a really cool one because not only does it grow in water and puts out knees for stability and gas exchange, but it's a deciduous coniferous tree. So it bears its fruit on cones, which are these round balls that are developing right now, but it also turns brown in the wintertime and loses all of its leaves. It's one of two species in North America that are deciduous coniferous. So this is bald cypress. All right, so our next species here that is a typical bottomland swamp species is called buttonbush. Its Latin name is Cephalanthus occidentalis. It lives in standing water all the time. It's actually a shrub, so it's a woody species. It has these really dark green, shiny leaves that grow in opposite pairs. And then at the end of its branches, it blooms into these really beautiful white puffball, cotton ball looking flowers. And then it'll eventually develop what looks kind of like a cone or a seed head that will drop off into the water, and the water will be used to transport the seed to new places. This plant is in the Rubiaceae family, and this is a classic bottomland hardwood forest species. Okay, here's another tree species for us. This is Acer rubrum, which is red maple. It's a species that can live on drier land, but usually moist forests, or it can usually tolerate quite a bit of flooding, like in this bottomland swamp in the Cache River Wetlands. It has highly deeply lobed leaves with a classic maple leaf with a palmate shape. The leaves are on these nice little red stems there, so that's something that helps to make it identifiable. You can see this species is really shrubby growing. It's multi-trunked. It's probably a little bit too wet in this spot for it, so it dies back often and then is able to do some sort of regrowth. So this is red maple, Acer rubrum. All right, here's another really cool bottomland hardwood forest species. This is called water Tupelo, which is Nyssa aquatica. We do have other Tupelo species in Missouri and Illinois, but this is the only one that grows in swamp areas. It's often called water olive because you can see that it has its fruits growing on the tree that look a little bit like olives. These are really cool. As they continue to develop, they develop like an air pocket underneath the skin of these seeds, and that allows it to be, well, that one's not because it's not fully developed yet, but that allows it to be buoyant in the water. So as they fall off the tree, the seeds get dispersed by water. They carry down the surface of the water to dry land, which is where they're actually able to set seed and develop, or set roots and develop. So Nyssa aquatica, again, a classic bottomland hardwood species. All right, our next really awesome species of the Cache River swamps is Rosa palustris, which is swamp rose. It's somewhat of a late blooming rose. We're in July now, and you can see it's pretty much in full bloom or just finishing up. It's very specific to wetland areas. You'll only find it in areas that flood regularly or have standing water. What makes it easy to identify from the other rose species is that it blooms later, but also the prickles, the thorns on it are curved opposed to straight. So that's Rosa palustris. You can see the 5-petaled pink flowers. There's bees all over this thing. Really cool species to look for in wetland and swamp areas. Okay, our last iconic plant of the bottomland hardwood swamps are these little green specks that we see floating on the surface of the water. If I grab some of them, you can see they have little small leaves and clusters, and then right on the tip of my thumb there you can see the root system hanging off. They're a plant that lives on the surface of the water. It's called duckweed. It's a lemna species, and they often form big mats of this. Sometimes you see photos, or you've been in swamps where it's just a green carpet on the top of the water. That happens usually with lower water. Right now the water's pretty high, with a lot of movement to it for this area. So they're not gathered up much. They've washed out a lot. But this is an iconic one for bottomland swamps. It likes really still water with very little movement. It's called duckweed. It's pretty cool, and it is something that you expect to find amongst the cypress, Tupelo, and buttonbush of a bottomland hardwood forest.